Kusuzangpo, good evening, good morning. Welcome to you who's joining us from many parts of the world. It's such a privilege to have you here with us right now. My name is Namgay Zam. I'm a former journalist and currently a communications manager at Mountain Hazelnuts. I am delighted to be having a conversation with His Eminence Kalu Rinpoche, who I will introduce in detail in a bit. But welcome to the first event by Bhutan Global Mindfulness. The Bhutan Global Mindfulness and Mice Holdings Private Limited is a joint venture between Druk Holding and Investments Private Limited Singapore. This is a subsidiary of Druk Holdings Investments. A lot of Bhutanese would be familiar with this, DHI, and G9 Investments Limited, an international investment company based in Singapore. So this is the first event. It is very auspicious that we're starting with a virtual mindfulness retreat. It's called Finding Calm in the Chaos. And with me is His Eminence, Kalu Rinpoche, recognized by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He is a distinguished yogi and meditation master, widely recognized for his deep knowledge and expertise in the practices of yogic discipline and mindful living. From an early age, Rinpoche dedicated himself to the study of traditional Tibetan yoga, perfecting techniques that harmonize body, mind, and spirit. His unique approach blends ancient yogic practices with modern insights, making his sessions transformative and accessible to people from all walks of life. I'm grateful that you're here to listen to Rinpoche's experience. I am also going to be listening in person for the first time to Rinpoche, and I'm so honored and privileged to be having this conversation with you, Rinpoche. Before we begin, I would like to request Rinpoche to lead all of us with a mindfulness session, a meditation session, Rinpoche.
Good evening and good morning to all our international participants. And thank you very much for inviting me over here. So I will start with a few minutes of meditation, a little bit of warm-up. And it's not going to be something so extraordinary, so keep your expectation low and simple. We're going to do two different kinds of meditation. So the first is more to do with the calm abiding meditation. And then towards the end, slowly, we will do a different kind of meditation afterwards. So in this one, we will do more to do with the breathing exercise. So physical and mental combined together and practicing it with a sense of awareness is very important. If you have a physical posture out of place and then only the mental level, and that cannot maintain in a very long term, even as a very short session. So therefore, you need to have a physical posture as well as a mental, as well as a awareness and the breathing in the right pace. So if you have that understanding, and then any sort of a length of meditation becomes useful. So now it will come down to the meditation itself. This is what we call calm abiding meditation, which is you sit in the meditation posture. You do not need to worship anything or anyone, so don't worry about it. If you have other faith or other religious ideas, you can keep it to yourself. Don't worry about it, because we, as a Buddhist practitioner, we do not believe in conversion. We believe in a universal understanding and wisdom and clarity. So therefore, with any faith, different background coming from the different faith, you can practice Buddhism. So that's that. Because if you think the Buddha is against that, then it contradicts his own teaching, isn't it? So therefore, now with that clear understanding, with the principle, and then I will teach you the meditation here. So as you're in this meditation posture right now, as we are breathing, keep your mouth closed, eyes a little bit not towards the wall, not too straight, but slightly towards your nose. Keep it gentle and tell yourself, everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence. You do not need to think with such a great sadness or grief that how the world is going on right now and how it is and what happened yesterday and tomorrow, what is going to happen. None of that. So just tell yourself that everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence, everything is bound to change, will change. And even right now, in this very moment, is constantly changing. So therefore, everything is impermanence. The reason why you have to think like that is because you will reduce the fixation. When you reduce the fixation, you develop the clarity, the quietness and the bliss in your mind. So therefore, with that sense of awareness that everything is impermanence, and then you focus on the breathing. When you breathe, when you exhale through the nose with the sensation of the breath going out, and then that time, from the very strong sensation of the breath that is going out, keep your mind to the sensation of the breath, to the very strong, to the very subtle level of the breath. As it goes to the very distant, as you inhale, and then keep your mind to the sensation of the breath that is inhaling it. You don't need to worry about how it is going out, how it is going in, and how it should and should not be, none of that. And you do not need to count. So you just simply exhale through the nose with the eyes gazing downward, and then with your mind focusing on the sensation to the nose and the breath that is gently exhaling and then gently inhaling. And then you can repeat like that for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No matter how, it depends how long you have regarding the time and the limitation that you have. So we can do just maybe 3, 4 breathing exercise together, and I will count the number. You just follow my voice and meditate together. So we say to ourselves that everything is impermanence, and then we exhale gently through the nose. We inhale gently. Keep your mind with the sensation of the breath. Exhale gently. Keep your mind to the breath. Abandon your concern. Abandon the thoughts. Abandon the force. And then inhale. And then third round. Exhale, keep your mind to the breath and the sensation to the nose. Inhale gently, subtle, maintain that bliss, maintain that clarity and awareness. That's it for now.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche, for the guided meditation. I think it brought us into the now, which I think is necessary to have this conversation. So that was a great segue to our conversation, Rinpoche. I want to talk about something that all of us experience intensely, either as young people or working professionals. It's really something called FOMO, Rinpoche. You'll be, I'm sure, familiar with this. It's the fear of missing out in this world, especially in this hyper-connectedness because of social media, the digital life that we live. Everybody else, you know, is doing better than you, or is attending this fantastic concert you want to go to and haven't reached, and you feel like you've missed out on something. And really, so how do you try and maintain a sense of calm when you feel like you're missing out on everything, Rinpoche?
You don't. That's my very simple answer. That's how you start. You don't start with a very ambitious mind, with a strategized team and everything perfect with the perfect condition and the perfect circumstance. That does not happen. Everything is chaotic and you feel like you're losing the race. You feel like you're losing the opportunity. You feel like you're not being seen, not being heard. You feel like you are competing against the giants in terms of whatever the competition may be. Even in the religious world, it has that kind of a similarities as your experience outside. Because religious organization is still an organization. Just because you are Buddhist does not mean you are enlightened. You are a practitioner of the Buddhist teaching. Does not mean that you are a very pure and realized being. There's a very clear distinction on that. That's number one. Number two is that virtuous mind, the calm mind with the great wisdom, that the overcoming the anxiety and not facing any sort of a depression, not facing any sort of fear, and overcoming all this kind of a social issues emotionally. I think the most important that you need is, you cannot say that I want to shut myself from all the technologies and all the movement that is happening around the world. But what you really need is a meditation, a little bit of mindful, a little bit of awareness, awareness of your senses, awareness of your critic, awareness of your people who praise you, people who criticize you, equally maintaining your awareness, maintaining your ego. But ego is a little bit hard to detect. A little
I was
bit.
going to ask you, how do you maintain your ego, Rinpoche?
Yeah, you don't. You don't. So therefore, you have to dissolve your pride a little bit. If you can dissolve your pride, then you can become an incredible leader. Because any sort of a temporary successful leader, the moment they are praised and rewarded at some point, and then they lose the ambitious, they lose the ethical value, they lose the principle, they lose the clarity in mind. So the more you maintain with the sense of awareness, awareness is very much different from paranoia. So you can be a businessman, you can be a successful individual, you can be a family man, or whatever it may be in the social standing. But then if you have ambitious with a lot of paranoia, temporarily you can see some success. But in the long term, that is very exhausting. Like an example, anger can really solve a certain kind of issues and problems at a certain point, but that is very exhausting. So therefore, awareness is very important. So the awareness does not mean that you need to convert to Buddhism. Awareness can be trained by yourself from any sort of a different religious faith, or you can be atheist. And then you can train mindfulness, how to train your emotions and detect all the negativity and overcome with a sense of positivity and develop the resilience and so on. And definitely, once you establish yourself in that foundation, and then all the success will come, all the joy will come, and all the blissful part of life tend to exist only then onwards.
So bringing it back to the context of the question that I asked you, the Rinpoche, then the first step would be to become aware that you're feeling some sort of envy, some sort of jealousy, addressing it, accepting that you're feeling that. Then the next step would be?
Yeah, the next step would be training yourself with a sense of meditation. First, you have to acknowledge your weakness. You have to acknowledge your jealousy, just like you described, that you have envy, that the circumstance that you are in, the unhappiness situation that you're in. You have to accept. The sooner you accept sincerely from the bottom of your heart, the faster you can make a further improvement. The more you try to deceive yourself, temporary solution, and then that's how people get into a depression and anxiety, because they cannot lie to themselves anymore. So the best is suffer a little bit, gain experience in life a little bit, not all the way, because then you're going, something is really wrong in your life. Suffer a little bit, yes, but don't suffer all the way. So try to adapt a little bit of awareness of our own emotion. There's a lot of natural circumstance of suffering that is beyond our control. But the emotion is something that is, you can maintain and guide yourself with the better solutions in day-to-day life, or whether it's something to do with your business, partner, contribution for the country, to the society, to this world, and so on.
At this point, I just want to invite all of our friends online that you're most welcome to send in your questions, and we'll be taking in your questions as this conversation goes on. So please feel free to do that. Rinpoche addressed a very important issue. I think a lot of us are afraid of suffering, and I think a lot of our problems arise from that. And you said, don't be afraid to suffer a little bit. What is your definition of a little bit, Rinpoche? I'm just concerned that my definition of suffering is very different from yours, and I just want to make sure that there's a standard definition of suffering. Is there a standard definition of suffering though?
It's just that people seek a solution in a spirituality or in Buddhism, and there's a lot of layers they cover themselves with, and a lot of pretentious attitude. And I tell people, I said, if you train yourself for the next 6-7 months, you can definitely overcome the anger very well, because you can see the very sensation of the anger, not after you have angered already, not after you are already got upset or emotional and so on. You can sense the anger the moment the anger appears and so on. So with the sense of stability of meditation, you can reduce the anger. There's a difference between suppressing the anger and seeing the anger and understanding the relative truth from it, and dissolving the very illusion of the anger within your own mind. And that is a very much possibility. And when I say anger, I've been through a lot of different people who have a lot of deceptions and betrayals one after another. I felt a lot of anger. and I justify a lot of my emotions through my anger. But eventually, everybody is gone with their own life. You're the only one that is left with, I am angry, this person, I am angry, this person, I am angry. You are the only one that is causing a more miserable than the circumstance that already exists, that already passed a long time ago. That moment did not exist anymore. That moment exists once upon a time. But that particular anger is due to your own self-attachment. So, and I tell people, just because you're a Buddhist practitioner does not mean that you overcome attachment. So do not overestimate yourself too much. If somebody comes and say, Rinpoche, you have no attachment, you're a Buddhist practitioner, you are mindful, and then I would say, yes, I am. And then if they take my antique statue away from me, I will say, please bring it back.
The sacred relic?
Yes, sacred relic or something.
Yes, Rinpoche.
And I still have my attachment. Right? So
yes.
Attachment are the subtle emotions that takes longer time to solve it. Anger and the pretentious attitude or jealousy, these are the emotions that you can overcome relatively quickly with some form of consistency, with some form of practice, and some form of discipline. And a virtuous mind along with it.
What is a virtuous mind, Rinpoche?
A virtuous mind is that little bit of compassionate thought. You know, compassion practice, when I say compassion, I don't mean walk to the street, give everything to the beggars. I don't mean that. I mean, of course, you can do that eventually if you really want to do a charity, which I do as well. But when it comes to the practice of compassion, that means a visualization that I am doing this more than for myself, but also for others. I'm not doing this not only for myself, but more for others. And when you have that kind of a mindset, an expansion, and then you become more resilient, and you become less vulnerable to your own anger. You become less vulnerable to the criticism. And yet you can sense and feel and see everything. You can still make the progress, but you just don't have to use the anger along the journey.
Rinpoche, there will be some of us today, including myself, who's sitting here and thinking, but easy for Rinpoche to say that because all you have to do is meditate and be a Buddhist practitioner. What about people like us who have to, take care of kids, have a full-time job? How do you find a balance? How do you bring yourself to a situation where you can feel that there is an opportunity to train your mind, to become calm, to become a better human being, Rinpoche? Like, how do you find that balance?
I think I suffer more than you. Let's just put it very simple and straightforward. I lost all my hair, my frontal hair, in my early 20s due to lack of sleep and due to stress. So all this sense of mindfulness and solution, I need it for myself more than our participant.
No, but I need to also share with all of our friends online that Rinpoche actually needs to take care of like 55 centers across the globe. So he actually functions on a 24/7 mode where he's up at 2 a.m. doing teachings, and he's here at this like hour 6 p.m. Bhutan time. But Rinpoche is joking about how he's lost hair, but when I'm sitting with him, I don't get any of that anxious energy, Rinpoche, like that a person who usually is overwhelmed has around them. So I don't know if there is like, how do you try and not go crazy then, Rinpoche?
No, there's a lot of instances that I went actually a little bit overboard, just so you know. I'm not trying to be some kind of a special model over here. I'm a human being, same as you are. I just have a little bit of more awareness than some of you, not all of you, some of you. I've done my 3 years retreat, and I have this responsibility of previous Kalu Rinpoche's legacy, which is I oversee the 3 years retreat centers and the Dharma centers around the world. And these are the Dharma centers that I have to oversee, whether it's a legal matter or the financial matter. And of course, we have regional officers as well, lamas and so on. But it does not mean that I'm disengaging from my responsibility. There's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of concern, and but then when you keep your management and your intention transparent, you have nothing to lose. That's my policy. Always be transparent. You lose a lot in the beginning, but you gain a lot at the end. That's very important. The more you pretend to be a spiritual figure, I'm this, I'm that, he's this and she's that, the more you will start to lose eventually. Because you cannot fool billions of people around the world. Come on. You cannot even fool a few 100,000 in your own city. let alone the people around the world. So my policy, what I understood, is that always be transparent from the beginning, lose a lot of things, accept to lose a lot of things, and gain a true friendship, gain a true, how do you call it, a transparency in terms of the management. And then those who work with you feels comfortable, you also feel comfortable, remove the hierarchy so that everybody feels kind of not delayed with what they want to express. But then again, you have to appoint the people who they want to express themselves carefully. If you have a very lack of tolerant individual who want to express all the time, it's a waste of time. But you also have to put the right people in the right place, who has a good tolerance, who has a good insight, but at the same time, the principle has to be transparent. So if you have transparent, then you can manage a lot of things, you have nothing to lose.
In short, it's like being real, as our millennials and Gen Zs like to say. So you're very real, and it just is being honest and truthful, Rinpoche.
But then at the same time, you need to show your courtesy, you need to show your love, you need to show your compassion, you need to show your spiritual understanding, you need to have a diplomatic relations, and you need to have a human relation, spiritual relation, religious relation. You need to maintain all that. But on the top of all that, transparency. Show what you are, be what you are, accept to be criticized, accept to be cornered temporarily. If you don't have the stomach for that, you don't have stomach for what is about to come. So that's my understanding.
Yes, Rinpoche. I think Rinpoche spit across something that isn't really, I mean, you would never hear it in a conversation with a spiritual master about how human he is, like how all of us are with these problems, and he didn't give you it. And Rinpoche didn't give us an answer saying, oh, go to a corner and meditate and everything will be okay. Have you ever said that to yourself, saying, maybe I should just go meditate in a corner and everything is going to be okay, Rinpoche? Have you had to do that also?
I'm addicted to problems. So I'm addicted to problems that I need to solve. And then it's something that I can do, I must do it. And that is my mentality. I used to be a person who's like, seen a lot of things, been through a lot of things. But then eventually, if I don't do it, then there will be no other person who will do it for you. So when you're in that circumstance, and then you keep on pushing forward, and so on. And I don't tell other people to do this and do that in terms of the religious authority and so on and so forth. I always focus very much into what is the error you made as a human being, and sticking very much to that. And the spiritual mistakes, religious mistakes, can be discussed afterwards. But the human relation has to be the first and foremost. That's my understanding.
At this point, I want to take in a question from one of our friends online. This is a question for you as an accomplished meditator, Rinpoche. Rinpoche, is observing the sensations of the body without reacting truly considered Vipassana meditation? What exactly is Vipassana meditation, Rinpoche?
Vipassana meditation, from my understanding, of course, different religious figures have their own interpretation. From my understanding, Shine means calm abiding meditation. So the calm abiding meditation can be such as when we did the breathing exercise, not with any symbol or syllable or idol or statue. It can be based on breathing exercise. It can be based on the looking at the peak of the mountain and keeping your mind at it and not following the thought before and after, or such as listening to sitting next to the river flowing and listening to the sound of the river and meditating it, not following the thought before and after, but rather just simply being the present of the sound of the river. And then, like an example, people having a conversation, not consumed by all the different topics of the conversation, but rather just simply listening to the echo of the sound of the conversation, meditating in that, and also utilizing that as a calm abiding meditation method. And then, or you can visualize yourself as a deity, or visualizing a certain religious objects and so on and so forth. Or you can do a yoga with the body and mind synchronizing together, and that is also calm abiding meditation. And then eventually, once you master the calm abiding meditation based on a different technique, and then there's a non-duality meditation, which is meditating into the nature of the mind. But I would like to recommend all of you, don't rush it. Doesn't work. Just focus into what we can, and gradually we can improve.
Right. So it's like a guide to somebody who's a beginner and wants to start meditating. We could start with what Rinpoche began with, the calming meditation, right, Rinpoche Les? So what if you want to make it a regular habit but don't have a lot of time? So I do remember Rinpoche mentioning it's really up to your convenience, but is there like a minimum time that you should be able to do to be able to get to that level of discipline, to be able to get into that state of mindfulness if with regular practice for people who have no time now? How much time should they dedicate?
Okay, let me put it very bluntly and straightforward with you to our participant. It takes time. Nobody has a shortcut. Anybody who says they have a shortcut, you have to run the opposite direction. It's very simple. Anybody who says that I'm your guru and you have to be my student, you have to run the opposite direction. Because no such spiritual figure has a time nor have the quality to tell somebody that you have to be my student. It is not a membership training. It is a spiritual liberation that we are seeking. So there's a very clear line between that, isn't it? So therefore, if you really want to make a further improvement, it takes 6 months. If you want to overcome a little bit of your anger, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of emotions, a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of depressions that you are going through, and that can be overcome by 15 minutes of meditation, 15 minutes of meditation in the evening. The most important is awareness of the distraction. Do not count the time, how long you do it, count the distraction. That's what I tell them. Count the distraction so that you improve it. If you count how long you do it, you lost it from the beginning. You count the distraction, so even the 5 minutes that you have done it becomes efficient. It will last throughout the day. And then you do it also in the evening. And then that's how you can really actually improve over the time. And that's my experience. And most importantly, just to add on the top of that, is that many spiritual seekers or believers or Buddhist practitioners, we tend to have this a trend of guilt, which is very much coming from other religious ideology. Buddhism does not pressure anybody just because you practice less and therefore you should feel guilty. Many people, they call themselves, I'm a terrible practitioner, and they kind of make themselves very small and escape themselves from this incredible, beautiful journey of mindfulness and spiritual understanding. And then they tell themselves, I'm not a good practitioner, I'm nothing, I have a bad karma, I'm not good enough. So you shouldn't think like that. You should always focus on what you can for a few minutes, meditation, and then improvement over the time. It will improve over time. On all the negative flow, it will be there, and eventually it will pass.
That's Rinpoche. Another thing that I think cripples a lot of us is really, this is another question of us, a question that's come in is really, we experience a lot of fear and anxiety about death. Are there any daily practices or habits suitable for a busy lifestyle that can help ease the dying process and bring peace of mind regarding what comes after?
I think there's, regarding the death, there's a few different answers. One is that you practice a solitude, have an unconditional faith and devotion and love to the teachings of the Buddha, and practicing it with the solitude, with the proper guidance. And that's a very traditional way of approach, which many practitioners throughout the century, they have done it. And that's how they overcome the fear of death and the process of death. And then they tell themselves, like an example, they put the cup upside down every evening and they tell themselves, there's no need to think tomorrow. And then today may be the last day, so be it. But they tend to train themselves in that. They also meditate and they also practice like that. And then that can be applied to people who are coming from a Mahayana background, a Vajrayana background, Theravada background. Now that's the majority of it. Now there can be also a secondary category, which is you spend a little bit of time with a few spiritual figures, try to listen to them a little bit, and with the good conditions, as you are laying down in bed, as you process the death approaches, the time of death comes into the so-called life in this human body, and then the Lama or the Rinpoche or the spiritual figure who will give you some sort of pardo tero, basically it is an intermediate state instruction. So that is already seen as a secondary solution. One is never to even think about that. Many people, they assume that they need to learn about the Bardo practice and they need to practice the intermediate state. Intermediate state can be done only if you have a conquer or understanding with the dream yoga. If you conquer yourself with the dream yoga practice, and then the intermediate state becomes another stage of transition. And if you haven't overcome or see yourself within the state of the dream and saying yourself, everything is illusionary, body and mind, and I am dreaming in this very moment, meditating, having this full awareness and so on and so forth within the stage of the dream, not just once or twice, but throughout every night. So the day becomes a practice, the night becomes a practice. If there's an individual like that, that is a very ideal situation. But not everybody has that ideal situation. So the final result is hearing Bardo intermediate state instructions, making prayers and aspirations. And the final result is, again, everybody making a prayers for you, and then you also telling yourself everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence. And that is like an example. When I was 7 years old, I lost my father. And this is also aligned with the grief, because when we talk about death, we cannot escape the grief. So I want to talk about the grief as well, which is part of life. When I was 7 years old, my late father was with me in the back of my car. And then as half an hour before he passed away, he came to me and he said, "Stop the car. I want to get a blessing from you. I'm not feeling well." And then as he came, and then I gave a blessing with this cow, make a prayer, and then he said, "Thank you, Rinpoche." He have never seen me as a son. He always seen me as a Rinpoche, as a reincarnation of his mentor. And then, after half an hour after that blessing, and then he passed away. And then my mother tried to give a CPR, didn't work. She was driving like a madman, because a lot of emotions going through, a lot of things to process. As we reached to the hospital, there was no solution because he had a stroke. And then when I reached to my temple, my mother was on her knees and I was on the chair in the residence of the previous Kalu Rinpoche. And then she held my knees and she said to me, "Rinpoche, do something, say something. You're Kalu Rinpoche, the most important guardian and the protector, a most loving person, your father, passed away. Say something, do something." And then at that time, I looked at her. I still remember this. I was 7 years old. I looked at her and I said, "My dear mother, I have a face of a 7 years old, a body of a 7 years old. Just because I'm your son does not mean I am immune to death. One day also this body will age or may not age, but I will also have to face death. You will also face death. Therefore, think of the meaning of impermanence." And that's what I told her, and so on. So the sooner we, accept the meaning of impermanence, the less we suffer from the grief and the process, the stages of the approaching death.
And you don't have to be a Buddhist to understand impermanence. This can be anybody just reflecting on how something is here today and it's gone tomorrow, Rinpoche.
Yes, but you don't have to become a bitter person. There can be many things that you can lose many things in life, many things. Your reputation, your image, position, your way of life, many things can be lost or lose due to different circumstances. So therefore, reflecting on the meaning of impermanence always helps. It develops some form of resilience. It develops some form of clarity and focuses on what is next from this present moment. And any individual who has a different background, religious faith or no faith whatsoever, they all can practice impermanence, but you do not need to reflect with a great sadness. You can reflect with the meaning of impermanence, seeing as it is, then moving forward with a greater resilience and understanding and clarity. That is the purpose.
Rinpoche, thank you for sharing such a powerful personal account. I think I just felt, you were just 7 years old and it was so profound, the whole experience and the message, and very grateful that you shared that to really bring impermanence into perspective for all of us. It's how do you realize, Rinpoche, that chaos is affecting you? That maybe you've lost your center, and some people do not realize that you really lost control of a lot of things, but you feel like but you tend to be very, very anxious and very intolerant of other people. But how do you recognize that in yourself, that maybe you have lost yourself in the chaos? Is there a way to identify?
Just some people have a lack of awareness and very, how can I say, very arrogant. And you can't help them. Even I give you a solution right now, it may be a solution for many, but due to the arrogance and the fixation of the mind, whatever that solution may be, temporarily cannot be the solution to utilize it. So that's why I told you earlier, in order to be successful in spiritual journey or in a worldly life, you need to overcome the illusion of the pride. You need to overcome the illusion of the fixation. You need to overcome the illusion of jealousy, anger, and so on, so that you will not deceive yourself. Other people will continue to deceive and betray you. That will never have a shortage in our life. But the one thing that you should do is that stop deceiving yourself first, maybe, and then other deception can be discovered very easily.
Rinpoche, there's something I want to bring us back to earlier. You were talking about, when we were talking about compassion, and especially in this, when you were bringing out about how we will always have people trying to deceive us. There'll be people who will betray our trust. How do you keep compassion for people like that, and how do you not allow yourself to be filled with the feeling of revenge and hatred towards them, Rinpoche?
Oh yeah, you should definitely feel revenge.
For how long?
Temporarily. My recommendation, feeling of sense of revenge should be a few minutes. Then you have to come down to your senses. Oh, I should do something, say something. It's fine. It's a natural impulsive reaction. Time to time we tend to have that. But then always try to reconnect to yourself and say, oh, that was irresponsible of myself. Oh, that was wrong. And try to make an acknowledgement so that when the next time occurs, you are more mindful. You are not suppressing. There's a difference, like I have mentioned before. There's a difference between suppressing your emotion, and that leads to an explosion. People going through burnout. And then there's an individual who has a sense of awareness. But then that really comes down to whether you are in the atmosphere or the surrounding with the awareness and mindfulness individual or not. If you have surrounding that has no mindfulness whatsoever, and then you being mindful also doesn't work, is it? So sometimes your workspace has to be mindful as equally as you are, so then everybody can associate and make things better over the time. And so sometimes having that sense of emotion is absolutely normal, and don't feel guilt from it, but try to come down to your senses, and then by meditation, like I have explained to you before, you will develop a clarity, so therefore you will have less impulsive reaction. And then over the time, even the subtle thought of an impulsive reaction will disintegrate or dissolve due to the consistency of your practice.
Yes, Rinpoche, we'll go back to questions from people who are following our conversation online. One is, what is the biggest misunderstanding about emptiness? These are coming from practitioners, I can make out from the questions. How can we understand it in order to meditate on it without ignorant views?
Well, the word of emptiness has a very high value in marketing. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Because you cannot understand the meaning of emptiness just because I say so. The very reality of the understanding of nature of the mind has to come from recognizing the subtle quality of oneself. When you recognize the subtle quality, first is virtuous quality. The right thing to do, avoid the wrong things, or come to a middle ground, and so on and so forth. As you enter with the sense of solitude mind, with the sense of wisdom and clarity, and then you will enter into the second stage, which is with the sense of awareness, more awareness, more awareness, more compassion, more awareness. And then as you enter the third stage, because your mind has nowhere to turn but inside. And that is the effect of the 3 years retreat, or any sort of retreat. Because the mind has nowhere to turn, it turns right back into your state of mind. It's a little bit like a ship. When you have a ship in the middle of the sea, the bird flies away from the sea. When there's no island, the bird comes back. When the bird is not coming back, that is a good sign. There's a, there's an island. There's a big destination that is approaching. But in our case, when you do retreat, solitude retreat, your mind has nowhere to turn but to turn inside at that stage. But even after your mind is already turned inwardly, there will be some stages that you need to go through. And then, after that, then you will enter into recognizing the subtle quality of oneself, the subtle qualities around it. Once you maintain enough, not just like 1 day or 2 days, but once you maintain that enough, then recognizing the nature of the mind is a possibility. So that's that. And then the nature of the mind is not nothingness. Many people, when they think about emptiness, they think about the dullness of the mind and the emptiness and nothingness. It is not nothingness. It is a consciousness that you are looking at it. And that very consciousness has a form of emptiness and has a continuation of knowing. If your mind is jumping all over the place, then your mind is not present. So it has a continuation of knowing, it has an emptiness, and then it has a inseparable and translucent state synchronizing together. And that is the so-called emptiness.
That's Rinpoche.
And you can forget about it.
No, we're not forgetting about it, Rinpoche.
Sorry.
I disagree. We're going to try and apply this.
They tend to become very stiff, when you talk about emptiness, and then their eyes become like an owl, wide open, and they become very stiff. And what is next sentence coming from his mouth? So that's why I always say, forget about it. So then
this is the training of the mind. We're doing it in real time, all of us.
Okay.
I'm doing it along with you as well. So this question next, Rinpoche, because you're talking about how you train your mind, others it's moving all over the place. So the person who sends this is a practitioner. And the person says that they have been meditating consistently for the past 6 years. And while it has undoubtedly helped them cultivate great awareness of their emotions, such as anger and fear, they still find that these feelings can sometimes get the best of them. And they've noticed that the monkey mind often distracts them and makes it challenging to maintain their level of awareness and mindfulness. And how can this person overcome this and deepen his or her practice life?
Deepen the practice. Okay.
6 years and hasn't been able to tame the monkey mind so much.
How many sessions? How many hours of session? So that is another question.
How many hours? Yes.
Because you can say, I've done practice for 6 years with the 5 minutes per day, which is also 6 years, isn't it? So therefore, I would say, whether you are actually improving in your spiritual journey or in the dharmic journey, whether you are improving or not, the distinction is you tend to develop some form of needless attitude. Like an example, as you practice over the time, your compassion will grow enormously. But before that happens, due to the sense of awareness, due to the presence of the spiritual understanding, the sensation of what you want to feel, how you want to look, how you want to perceive goes away. And then eventually the taste of the food, portion of the food becomes less important. And you start to say, oh, long as I consume a food to sustain my physical form, to reach my destination, then that's good enough. So if you have that kind of a understanding, and then also the sleep becomes light, not like people who drink alcohol and then passing out and blackout, not that kind of a sleep, but even the sleep becomes a very subtle. Like an example, you can wake up in the middle of the night and the first thought you have is the Dharma and the meditation and compassion. You're not sitting and trying to do prostration. You're not trying to prepare yourself. You're just there and being present. So these kind of a small state of experience is a distinction whether you're actually improving or not. And then avoid the idea of the miracles as much as possible, because even the obstacle can be seen as a miracle sometimes. So do not deceive your mind with such a great idea of miracles of this and miracles of that. avoid superstition as much as possible. Superstition is one of the poison that doesn't really help you in the spiritual journey. So therefore avoid the seeking miracles, avoid superstition mind, stick to the actual progress before and after and current and so on. And then whether you're developing a needless attitude or not. The reason why I'm saying this is that my first year, I was terrible in my 3 years retreat. I entered 3 years retreat when I was 14 years old. So first year was terrible. I was having instant noodles, very unhealthy, sleeping a lot, a lazy practitioner. And like I described to you earlier, as your mind has nowhere to turn, and then it starts to turn inwardly. And then from the second year, I started to do Niguma yoga more and more. And then the needless attitude tend to develop over the time. And then from the second year, third year, and the fourth year, because we did 3 years and 9 months instead of 3 years and 3 months. And then from second year onward, the middle of the second year, I start eating cabbage, or 150 grams of cabbage. No lunch, no dinner, no snacks, no tea, no food from outside, nothing. Just a one bowl of cabbage between 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not saying you should do that, okay, so I don't have to face the legal issue. Otherwise you will say, Kalu Rinpoche, you recommended this diet, so then I became sick and unwell and so on. So I just have to make it clear, this is not advice for you, this is my own personal journey. So I consume food like this, and if I'm very excited and very happy and feeling adventurous, I would put a little bit of soy sauce. And then if I'm feeling like, I need to feel a little bit of strength, then I will put 1 spoon of butter, Amul butter, that one. And then that's how I sustain myself, and the practice has been very full of blessings and improvement. And I had 18 other people who witnessed that and who can testify anytime. So this is not a mysterious animal that nobody sees. I have seen. This is not where we're going. So I can testify some of I can bring some if you're having hard time convincing. But what I'm trying to say is like a Milarepa.
I was thinking of Milarepa when you said that, Rinpoche.
I still wouldn't touch nettles. So I would rather choose cabbage over any time over nettles. But that's what happens. But then if you don't maintain it, and then again, even you reach to that level of understanding and subtleness of the quality and energy, you're still vulnerable. So always think that you're vulnerable. It's very important. Never think that, now you have studied a little bit, you have practiced a little bit, now you're untouchable. Never think like that. Always think you're vulnerable. And that will, how can I describe, divert from all the problems in spiritual journey.
Accepting the fact that you're not invincible just because you can practice meditation and you've acquired some understanding of Buddhism.
Yes. And then one losing their own path, and then it will mislead all the other people along with it. And that has a negative impact, isn't it?
Yes. Rinpoche, you already mentioned a few tips for incorporating mindfulness into our daily lives. But besides, of course, you put a disclaimer saying that cabbage is an option. Besides that, what other tips would you share with our friends who have joined this conversation? Some mindfulness tips there.
Some mindfulness tip. I have to think about it carefully. But then if I think too much, then it will be a few hours of thought and a sense of reflection in oneself before I tell you. The mindfulness advice and tip is that be aware of anybody who says that I am your mentor, I am your guru, you must listen to me blindly and faithfully with no critical thinking whatsoever. Run in the opposite direction. Avoid this kind of individual. I have met many masters in my lifetime. I never heard from them saying that you are my student, I command you to do this, and you should do it. Like trying to corner you to react to a certain way. So that kind of environment you should avoid, wherever you are. That's number one. Number two is that whether it's a Vajrayana Buddhist teachings, whether it's a Theravada teachings, whether it's a Mahayana teachings, always have a sense of openness to all the different wisdoms coming from the different master. Don't try to isolate yourself. I used to be that person, like where you say, I am from this lineage, right? Then you travel around the world has a much more bigger problem than lineage, which is a little bit of quietness of mind, a little bit of empathy, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of common understanding, a common ground, with a sense of collective contribution towards a greater purpose. And you start to see all that, isn't it? So, therefore, sense of my lineage and my this, reduce that a little bit. Try to receive from so many different teachers and teachings. But when it comes to your core principle, maintain simple-minded as possible. When it comes to teaching, receive many teaching as possible. When it comes to practice, stick to one. When it comes to teaching, many teachings. When it comes to practice, stick to one. Don't be collective when it comes to practice. It's the other way around. Many people, when they become like a seeker in spiritual journey, they tend to have this want to collect many practices possible. It doesn't work very well. It never worked for the last few thousand years. I read a little bit of history, so I know. You can read too. And then try to do a little bit of solitude. Like an example, the Gelugpa mindfulness that His Majesty is going to create, and where so many Buddhist traditions, masters are establishing their temples and universities and institutions and retreat centers. Like an example, coming to this kind of places, doing a retreat, doing a little bit of solitude, engage, join a seminar, do something like that. I think that will be helpful. And try to be kind to yourself a little bit. Don't be harsh. I know you want to succeed, you want to be the master of mindfulness and the great practitioner whatsoever. Don't be too harsh. There's a life to be, there's more life to live in this single life. So don't be too harsh. People tend to push you in this competition in the spiritual journey as well. Don't try to copy others. Be authentic, be sincere, whenever you can. Yeah.
I think that's something we can try and do. Not always the easiest thing to do, Rinpoche, especially I think being kind to yourself. And last two questions, Rinpoche, very quickly. I think this is really important because I've been a people pleaser all my life as well. Like I find it very difficult. You're surprised by that, Rinpoche.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I don't know if I should feel hurt. No, Rinpoche, but the person who sent in this question is, people's action and their moods impact me a lot. Yeah. This makes me so anxious. I feel like a pathological people pleaser, and it impacts my inner peace so much. What should I do, La?
That is a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I guess, how do you let other people's judgments not affect you so much, and what they think of you not affect you, like Rinpoche?
I think you need to have a little bit of deeper look within yourself. That's more important. When you don't have a deeper look, then you try to please other people. So try to have a little bit of insight, look, meditate, think carefully, research carefully, contemplate upon yourself carefully, again and again, the purpose of your life, the goal, your ambitions, your principle, your ethic, all of it. Scan, examine everything. So then you will stop pleasing other people. It's very simple.
There's also people who would say that, when you have your boundaries, Rinpoche, that you can say no to people, that you could also be perceived as being unkind and not very Buddhist.
Yeah. They will say whatever they want. You stick to what you got to do.
You have to speak to Kalu Rinpoche more, because I think he has the answer to this, but he doesn't have the time to share all of it here, Rinpoche. Okay. So you're writing a book on this, Rinpoche.
No.
Well, we'll try and get this, but really, I think inner reflection, as Rinpoche shared, because we don't have the time to go into this deeply, but I thank you for sharing that, Rinpoche. Yeah. One last question, Rinpoche. How effective is meditation to people who have ADHD, attention deficit disorders, and those who are on different spectrums of autism, Rinpoche?
I think there's a people who has autism and the ADHD. There's other researchers who teach meditations already. It has been useful, but then again, I cannot say that it's helpful to everybody. It depends on the individual. Like an example, individual who are going through different kind of addictions, or like an example, a grief. and a different individual react differently, and I think it's based on the individual interaction rather than the one quick solution to all. So as a Buddhist practitioner, that's what I believe in. So even it has a universal benefit, I think really comes down to engaging. If you have a certain condition, if you have a medical condition, seek a medical attention. If you have a spiritual condition, and be patient. Don't try to get a quick answer. Don't try to find a quick solution. Try to have a consultation, from the spiritual or mentor, and be patient along with that. Don't try to have that quick result approach. And I think long as you approach in that way, the person who's providing you the solution and then you as a receptor, I think it would be more beneficial.
Yes, Rinpoche, thank you. At this point, I want to request Rinpoche again to close with a guided meditation session for us, Rinpoche.
Okay. So this meditation, it comes from the Niguma. She is born in a Brahman caste, and she left all her family belonging and she became a yogini. And she said, I have no human figure, guru, and I have one guru, and that is the Buddha himself. And that is to show her level of realization. And she is revered by all the great yogis and yoginis, very much as equal as a green Tara, an enlightened being, 1,100 years ago. She has so many different techniques of meditations and teachings and practice. And there's one very unique teachings which I'm happy to share with you, and that is cleansing with the Ah. So you visualize on the top of your head, you visualize a tetrahedron, you visualize a letter Ah, syllable, whether it's our Dharma letter or whether it is an English letter, doesn't matter. So visualizing the Ah letter, tetrahedron, and then you have the tetrahedron shape, and then within the tetrahedron, you're visualizing the Ah. And as you meditate with a physical posture like this, and then you say ah, ah, ah 3 times with a sense of echoing, and then try to think that the ah has been burst into a nectar and fulfilling the whole tetrahedron. And then try to do ah, ah, ah. And then at the second phase, try to think that all the nectar has been overflowing from the tetrahedron and covering internally and externally part of your physical level. And then all the negative trauma and negative energy and negative, all this, any sort of a negativity has been cleansed from the physical aspect and the mental aspect. And with that in mind, and then you visualize the Ah and the tetrahedron and the nectar, and repeating that visualization 3 or 4 times. And then you say, ah, 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 ah. And then at the end you can say, by accumulating this positive and harmonious moment, and then I dedicate this positive to all the sentient being with utmost sincerity and love from my heart. Then you hold on to that thought for 1 minute. And then tell yourself, everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence, everything is impermanence. That's it.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche.
You're welcome.
That was a wonderful guided meditation session. Thank you so much for sharing so candidly with us, Rinpoche. I'm sure everybody who joined us today is as appreciative and as grateful as I am, Rinpoche. Yes. Thank you so much, La. On your screens, you will see a QR code for Bhutan Global Mindfulness and Mice Holdings Private Limited. Please follow the social media accounts for more sessions like this. There will also be a QR code and there's an online survey that we request you to fill. We would love to hear your feedback on the session and basically what you would like to see as events from Bhutan Global Mindfulness and Mice Holdings Private Limited. With that, I want to thank everybody for giving us your time. I've learned so much sitting with Rinpoche here today. I feel like it's been my karmic I think it's a karmic blessing for me, Rinpoche. I really enjoyed and learned from this conversation, and I am actually going to go and look up Niguma herself, because I think it's something I'm very curious about now, and I hope that I'm sure many of you who have joined are actually Buddhist practitioners and have been doing this for way longer than I have, and so much respect for you for doing this, and really so much respect for the time that you've given us. I hope that what Rinpoche has so kindly shared with us today, that you will be able to take a little bit away and apply it in your daily lives to really improve the quality of your lives. And I hope that you did find at least one answer in this conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us, La.